Hi, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, greetings. How are you today? This is Mama Kali, Mama Moringa, as so many people want to call me, but my tribal name is Amanisi Maori Kohari, and I'm indigenous to the Americas. I'm so glad you've joined me today because we're going to talk about the most important thing in your life, which is your health. Now, let me remind you of something that whenever you're on an airplane, what is the first thing they tell you? They tell you about saving yourself. And what is the thing that they tell you? They say, put your oxygen mask on first before you put on somebody else's. That means that you have to save yourself if you're going to save anybody else. In other words, don't put somebody else's life before yours, because you may expire before they do and you won't be any help to them anyway. Okay, so we're going to talk about your health. Now, there is a philosophy of health, and wow, I'm 72 years old. I've been in the health field, you might even say, all my life, because I was with my mother. My mother was from the old school. She was like born in 1900, and so she came up in a little Indian village in North Carolina. And so I basically came up with the old ways. Whenever I got a little sick, came home from school and feeling a little bad on a rainy day, she would go outside and to the backyard and pick some herbs and fix them up, give them to me, put me to bed, and the next day I was fine. I've never been sick a day in my life. Why? Because first of all, we raised our own food. And we ate straight, what we didn't raise, we ate straight from a farm. And then, of course, I grew up with fresh fruits, fresh vegetables. My mother made her own butter, brought the milk from the local farmers. I mean, in other words, we ate locally. We ate what the people raised locally. We ate what my mother raised in the backyard. We did not live on a farm, but in those days in the South, everybody had a garden, and I believe that that was just a part of who we were. And so we have to go back to that. And one of the most important things that we have to do is to go back to natural medicine. One of the reasons why we are so sick as a people today, and we are sick, never seen so much, but because I've been working in the field of health, nutrition, and herbal medicine now for the past 30 years, actually 40 years, I've been working in this field, and before I was doing it professionally, I did it in I took care of my family in that way. They came up on herbs, my children. And now my grandchildren are coming up on herbs. They ask for herbs when they're not feeling good. So we have to look to how we can heal. But first, let us understand why we're sick. We're eating unnatural foods. Whenever you go into the supermarket, if the things that you end up in your basket come from the center of the store, then you're eating artificial food. Okay? You should concentrate on buying your foods around the outside of the lanes of the store. Like your fruits and vegetables, they're always on the outside. You know, all of the fresh produce are always on the outside. Of course, the eggs and the milk and things like that, although I do not recommend cow's milk because it's not quite what it was when my mother was making her own butter. It was clean milk at that time. Now, I don't even want to start that. That's a whole lecture. But nevertheless, there are milks that you can get that are plant-based. And these are the ones we want to prefer. we prefer. So in order to stay healthy, shop at least 90% of your food you buy in the supermarket on the outskirts of the market, and not outside, but the walls around the outsides of the market, and not the artificial foods in boxes that you get. Okay, so my philosophy, and many of those in the natural healing, is that first of all, sickness begins when you have an artificial diet, okay? An accumulation of mucus and toxins in the body. Now, how is it that they're able to keep foods in a box for 2 years? Because they use artificial preservatives, they use all kinds of toxins to keep them edible for 2-3 years sometimes. And your body is not used to those toxins. And so there are many ways that the body gets rid of toxins, and one of them is storing them in fat. Now, one of the reasons why there's an explosion of obesity in this country is because of the intake of artificial foods with all kinds of toxins in it, with all kinds of preservatives, with all kinds of food colors. And so it also creates excess mucus in the body. So here you have a combination of excess mucus and toxins, and very often it's all stored in the fat cells. And so actually the fat is trying to protect you from what you're eating. Another thing that is really, really very, very, this artificial sugar and artificial fats that they have put in foods, the artificial, like aspartame, what is it, sweet and low, let's see, all these artificial sweeteners, they are also at the core of why we have so much obesity. In other words, they call it diet food, but that diet food is dying you. In other words, it is causing too many problems with your health, and number one, obesity. And this is also true of the artificial fats that are in the food, basically to help to keep them from spoiling all the time. Those things they call trans fats. Okay, now back in the day, they used to tell us that that artificial butters were like margarines, plant-based margarines were good for us. But then 20 years later, after everybody had gained an extra 100 pounds, then they call them trans fats, and they tell us that they are killing us. And so in other words, for me, I was very, very happy that I never fell for any of those things, and I basically just stayed away from the toxins, and I raised my family, and now my grandchildren also, are being raised that same way, away from toxins. So in my life, what I have done is remembered all the things that my mother told me about medicines, about natural things. And I have striven all these years to stay on the course that I was taught from birth. And so I think that how it got started was that my husband and I he was a botanist, and we wrote a book about herbs, the science and romance of selected herbs used in medicine and religious ceremony. And people started asking us for the herbs. It wasn't our intention to go into herbs at that time, but this is what happened. And so we began to develop different types of herbs that people wanted. Now, this all began back in the late 80s. I believe the mid 80s is when we started developing the line of products, and it developed over the years. Now, the one thing that has become the major herb, or what people look to when they go online or call me, is Moringa. Now, Moringa was later on. We had a line of herbal products long before we had Moringa. But it so happens in 1999, we were asked to, first of all, go and find a moringa tree in West Africa. Well, my husband knew the tree because he, being born in West Africa, he knew that particular tree. He was brought up in forestry, his father being a botanist as well. And so we took a trip to West Africa, and our mission was to find moringa trees growing in the wild. So we were able to do that and bring specimens back. And then a couple of years later, soon we found out that, well, we were asked to be a part of a team to evaluate how moringa actually is beneficial in villages, small villages throughout West Africa. And the pilot program was created in, Senegal. And actually I have the poster right here, the original poster. And it was focused on women, infants, and children, and using